Yeah, it look like that phone you know. It now go really to work with the program I want to deal with. The soundtrack I record, but this thing look like it have a limit on how long it can record video. Anyway, without further ado, get into this thing, you understand? So we say introduce I and I self. You know, I and I as Faada Joe the Ghetto Diplomat. Yeah, right now I'm representing the African Kingdoms Federation under the stewardship and guidance of Her Imperial Majesty Empress Sheba Deborah Kasum Surah III, Queen of Sheba, Queen of the South. You understand? So now, African Kingdoms Federation have a thing called the Project 7 Phoenix Agenda. And that proposes to simultaneously develop the whole of the continent of Africa. And by extension, we deal with a thing called poverty alleviation on a global scale. So now, we're embarking on a thing called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and therefore there shall be many changes. So in preparation for that, the wisdom of Her Imperial Majesty is such that she bring forward a thing called training in some life skills. You understand? So, these training now, it have many objectives, but primarily within the African Kingdoms Federation is just to synchronize each and everyone's minds so that we can speak to each other in a similar language so we can understand. But by extension to the greater public now we understand, so well then, with these challenges that's coming with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the things that we used to do, we can't do them before. Our mindset must be elevated so that we can encounter these challenges and surmount them. You understand? So now, things called the dynamics of existence, communication, conflict resolution, honesty and integrity. Yeah, these things are very necessary for an I to traverse our environment, the reality that we are going to share, because the world, like how we knew it, is not going to be the same from this pandemic and to time immemorial. This evolution shall continue. So today now we're gonna discuss the dynamics of existence. Yeah, and I think there are 8 dynamics of existence. We'll get into it later. We're gonna discuss the survival, our own survival, as it relates to the dynamics of existence. And then, as the songs before you heard, say from interaction with man and man, there must be conflict. And then when conflicts arise, there must be resolution. So we're gonna discuss working out the best solutions as we traverse the dynamics of existence. So, without further ado, I'll just read a little chapter. The first chapter, dynamics. It's not very long, but we'll try our best to convey the message. Might stop and start to try to explain a few things, but that's how it is. Where it goes like this. The driving force behind all of your actions and decisions, and the most important thing in life, is to survive. To survive means to remain or continue in existence, to live. We call this driving force to survive an urge. In Scientology, we have learned that there are 8 separate urges to survive. Each one of these is called a dynamic. Everything you do and every choice you make is driven by the urge to survive. You understand? So, the authors of these life skills courses is the Church of Scientology. So I must point out at this point in time that it is not the intent of the African Kingdoms Federation to promote the ethos or recruit members for the Church of Scientology. We are utilizing this set of programs to, as I said, facilitate that one vernacular within the African Kingdoms Federation, and by extension to deploy these messages so that people can change their ways of thinking. The mistakes that we made before, we don't have that tolerance level to make those mistakes. The world is going to be digital. That is the emphasis of the fourth industrial revolution. And so our time is limited. We don't have that capacity to sit around and make a comedy of errors in our life. We have to be very strategic in our thinking, because that's the way life demands us to be. So these tools become very relevant and pertinent to our own very much survival. So we'll continue. The 8 dynamics represent different compartments of your life in which you are surviving. The first dynamic is the urge to survive as you, as an individual. It is the urge to be an individual and to reach the highest level of survival for the longest possible time for yourself. So that is you the individual. We're not speaking about your mom, we're not speaking about your father, we're not speaking about your brother, your sister, your children, or nothing at this time. We're speaking of you who have facing the reality of life, of the creation. You understand? For example, taking care of yourself, keeping your body clean, preserving your teeth, eating properly, getting rest, and getting care when you are ill are all things you do to help you better survive on the first dynamic. You understand? So it's all about you. Yeah. So you just have to now sit back and wait for what's to unfold, because then if you think that this seems a bit selfish, then you jump into conclusions. You need to just take it easy and listen what's up. So now we're going to speak about the second dynamic. The second dynamic is the urge to survive through a future generation. It has 2 parts, sex and the family, which includes the raising of children. You get that bit? So now here comes other humans in your reality. You understand? So now the reason why now we've moved on to the second dynamic is because of your innate instinct to survive and to reproduce yourself. But the material body is such that you won't be here forever. But your consciousness, you as an aspect of the reality, it continues through your children. You understand? So, the procedure go. As Assassin tell you, without a man and a woman, no baby can make. You understand how I deal it? So this is what the second dynamic is about. That reproductory element. You understand? So now we'll move on to the third dynamic. The third dynamic is the urge to survive as part of a group. So now you ask yourself, is not your family a group? Yes, your family is the basic group of any society. But then it gets a little larger than that. For example, the people in your office, your school, your town, your nation, and even your football team or musical group are all part of your third dynamic. So then we've put importance on you, then your family, and then your wider community. You understand? The fourth dynamic is the urge to survive through mankind. Whereas one race, people with a common color or nationality, would be considered a third dynamic, all the races of man together would be considered the fourth dynamic. Now, to me, this is very important, because now we're stemming from a concept, especially within the African Kingdoms Federation, where we've acknowledged that Africa is the cradle of all humanity, and we have a common lineage, common ancestors. Yeah, everyone began life in Africa. So this notion of races is not something that we want to perpetuate. Obviously, there will be physical differences between people that we can visibly see. But as we know it, once you're a living human being, dare I say you're an African, because that's where life began. So yeah, that's the fourth dynamic. The fifth dynamic is the urge to survive for any and every form of life. You understand? Remember in the song a while ago, I think it was Bob Andy singing about, country life. Yes, singing about the trees and stuff like that. Yeah, the trees and the animals, these are all part of our existence, all part of our reality. And we have to have a high affinity with our reality in order for us to traverse the creation and survive. So it says, the fifth dynamic is the urge to survive for every and any form of life. This would include all living things, whether animal or plant. For example, fish, dogs, cats, lions, grass, trees, flowers, and even insects are all part of your fifth dynamic. Then the sixth dynamic. This is the urge of the person to improve the survival of the physical universe. Now that's a topic now where it can be contentious, but when you look at it, it makes sense. So when the night comes and the moon comes and unveils those other lights, those constellations in the sky, what the scientists have told us is that through the use of technology, they've gathered certain information about these stars that we see and the wider universe that is so enchanting. And scientists have proposed projects and programs to go and encounter and investigate our reality that extends out there. And I think when you check it, when we look at our creation, I think there is an ancient wisdom that says, what we read in the scriptures is that 6 days God toiled to make the creation, on the seventh day he rested. But then there is other ancient texts that say that for the 6 days he toiled and made the creation, and from the seventh day he rested. So now the work is up to us. So then, as an intelligent species, I think it's only natural that we would want to investigate our reality. So that is the focus of the sixth dynamic. The seventh dynamic can be called the spiritual dynamic. It is the urge to survive as a spiritual being, or the urge for life itself to survive. This is separate from the physical universe and is the source of life itself. So basically now what it's confirming to us is that you who forms the first dynamic, you are a spiritual being. And all other aspects, all other dynamics are spiritual in their existence and the basic form. You understand? So that urge to survive as a spiritual being, that is entailed in the seventh dynamic. Now we'll move on to the eighth dynamic. And for me, when I see the chart that depicts the eight dynamics, I think of it as a frequency. You know, when they're showing you a radio mast and the frequency that pulses. This is what comes into my mind. You understand? When I see the chart that depicts the eight dynamics of existence. So let's talk about the eighth dynamic. This is that dynamic that is the most commonly discussed as the creator. So regardless of any religious system or wherever it is, we're speaking about the cause of our existence, the first cause. You understand? And we refer to that as the creator. Some refer to it as God. Some refer to it as Jah. Yeah, indeed. I and I as Rastafari, we say Haile Selassie the first and Empress Menen. Yeah, understand. So this is the dynamic of God, or the supreme being, and all creative spirit. It is the urge toward existence as infinity. So that is beginning without end. You understand where I'm dealing? These 8 dynamics include all of your goals of survival and all the things that you survive for. A person in trying to survive, one way or another, on all of these dynamics at once. This is basically the objective of life. To survive on these dynamic levels all at once. Now, just thinking of it, you understand that it's a great balancing act. And some people fall short, some people succeed, some people ebb and flow. Yeah, at times they succeed, at times they falter. So then, as I said to you when I introduced the song from Assassin, he said, the laws of life. To traverse our reality, we need concepts that guide us. And I think this is the essence of these 19 life skills courses. As I've said, we are approaching the 4th industrial revolution, or for me, the 4th industrial revolution has begun, and it's unveiling itself, and it's gathering momentum to become the main focus of our existence. And so our mindset cannot be pre-pandemic. We have to adjust it. We have to raise our level of affinity to the reality that is now with us, and how we communicate with that reality with the people around us, the people who are authors of this reality, and our own survival, how we conduct ourselves. Yes, we have to adjust our level of thinking, because we cannot approach it from the perspective that we had before the pandemic. Most people will tell you that if you look for life to return to normal as we knew it before the pandemic, you are barking up the wrong tree, to say the least. So yes. Okay, continue. The dynamics can be shown as a series of circles, with the first dynamic at the center. A person expands outward as he begins to survive on the other dynamics in his life. So that was I was saying. That diagram that depicts the 8 dynamics of existence. It gives, it's like, you can look at it many ways. And with those pictures in nature that come to mind when you see it, it's something communicating deeper within you. So, as I said, like a radio transmitter, that the frequencies, that's what those circles, concentric circles, remind you of. It also reminds you of when you drop a pebble in water and it ripples. That's what these things remind, this diagram reminds you of. And if you look deeply at those things, you get an understanding of the mechanics of the dynamics of our existence. So yeah, so that was the first chapter regarding the dynamics. Yeah, I'm reading this thing, and it just goes through where it it tries to let you do the course again. So okay, now we said we're gonna discuss in chapter 2 survival and your dynamics. So let me just get straight into it, because I don't want the video to end without us finishing this, because then it would defeat the purpose. Perhaps then what I would have to do is go live and get it done. So let me do it this way and see how it goes. So here we're going to discuss survival and your dynamics. Excuse me. By inspection of man himself, every person seems to have an urge for survival on each one of the dynamics. For example, someone can be interested in the survival of groups, the 3rd dynamic, just as much as he is interested in his own survival, the 1st dynamic. He might love to exercise and keep his body fit just as much as he enjoys working hard to help his football team win the game. As soon as you get rid of or knock out one of the dynamics, a person begins to experience trouble. So that's what I was saying. Those 8 dynamics, to survive at each level of those dynamics simultaneously is a hard balancing act. Some ebb and flow, some falter, some succeed without any effort apparently, but we know it's a rocky road, as the artist would say. So as soon as you get rid of or knock out one of the dynamics, a person begins to experience trouble. For example, if someone is not allowed to be a part of any team or group, the third dynamic, he might start to feel he's not wanted, and his first dynamic becomes less. He does less and less to help his family, and that, the second dynamic, also suffers, and so it goes. All of his dynamics get smaller. So we see that if something happens to lessen survival on one dynamic, it can affect the other dynamics too. If you hurt yourself and end up in the hospital, thus harming the survival of your first dynamic, then you could possibly lose your job and no longer be part of your work group, your third dynamic. You could then also lose your paycheck and have a large doctor bill, and that could mean the family had less money to spend on clothing, food and shelter, your second dynamic. The whole package of all 8 dynamics is vital to the survival of any person. In today's society, people are educated to believe that man thinks for himself alone. Some people have to be forced, whipped, beaten and educated to even have a third dynamic. They have to be jailed. They have to be sent to school. They have to be punished, fined, taxed and made to vote. People can think all of these things have to be done just to make a person have a third dynamic. It is the same way with the fourth dynamic, mankind. Have you ever known anyone who thought only dogs were man's best friend and that his fellow man was no good? This person is concentrating only on the fifth dynamic: fish, dogs, cats, lions, grass, trees, flowers, etc. It will be all right for the person to continue to have this idea, but only until that idea fails, as it is not true. For example, say this person got very sick and one day and asked his cats and dogs to help him get well. But of course they can't, and the person asking the animals for help fails. He then has to go to a hospital and get other people to help him survive. It's not true that any one of the 8 dynamics is most important than the others. They are all parts of the overall game of life. However, it will be found among various people that each person puts more attention on one or more of the dynamics than the others. For example, a musician might put almost all his attention on practicing day and night, 7 days a week, to try to become the best violin player in the world, paying no attention to his family or friends. These other dynamics suffer and will cause him trouble. The whole reason for having the dynamics divided into the 8 urges is to increase your understanding of life by dividing it into the parts. Having divided life in this way, each part can be inspected by itself and inspected to see how it works with the others. As your understanding of them grows, you are better able to survive well along all of the dynamics. As an example of this, take a baby who is not aware beyond the first dynamic, self-dynamic, when he is born. But as the child grows and becomes interested in more things, he can be seen to start to survive on other dynamics. He learns that his family is a group and that he has a group of friends, third dynamic. And then he goes to school and learns about other people living in other countries and becomes aware of mankind, the fourth dynamic. He learns about animals and insects, fifth dynamic, and now owns a dog and a bird as pets, and so on. As a counterexample to this, consider a person who is not capable of living well on the third dynamic, the group dynamic, and does not like being a part of a team. Someone like this is looked at as not having a social existence. He lives his life by himself and is not part of any group with others. So how do you act so as to operate successfully along all of the dynamics? The way to do this is to learn how to survive the best you can on each of the dynamics. Together, the eight dynamics all add up to your survival in life. So basically now, this is telling you about the interrelatedness of each dynamic. And what it says is that there is no dynamic that is more important than any other. And for me, that is a very profound thing. Or as someone very much interested in spirituality, someone very much interested in fathoming as much as we can within our present state that is embodied by a physical body, and being a spiritual being, that acknowledgement of the reality of a creator. So now, what the diagram says is the biggest circle is the eighth dynamic. And that is the God dynamic, the creator dynamic, the first cause dynamic. Then it goes into the spiritual dynamic. So you can look at it as something descending, but then be careful if you look at it that way, because then you will try to prioritize or even a hierarchy of importance. But what is being said here is that no dynamic is more important than the other. They all interrelate and they all work together. And it is best that you try to survive at each dynamic. You understand? For your life to become successful. You understand? And the examples given, they hint at certain types of personalities of people. You understand? So in other courses within the life skills, they speak about honesty and integrity, and in that they identify the social personality, which is basically good, and the antisocial personality that is basically not good. So I think if someone intentionally retards their progress in any dynamic, it is an indication of the type of personality they are. So as these 8 dynamics are interrelated, so are the 19 life skills. And that is important to note. And as I said, it is imperative that we take a good look at these 19 life skills and what they signify and what they mean. Because as we prepare ourselves to encounter the 4th Industrial Revolution, what we're saying is that we cannot afford to approach it with the mindset that we had prior. You understand? So, yeah, I'm doing the questions because I need to get to the 3rd and final part. So, as I said before, some people are successful at life because they operate at each dynamic at the right level of intensity. Their affinity with that reality of each dynamic is high, and so they know how to communicate with their environment and the people around them better. And so their efforts, the targets and goals that they set for themselves, they're more successful at it. You understand? And I think when you see that, it's an indication that they are of a social personality as opposed to an antisocial personality. You understand? I think what we're likening the social personalities to are the angels. I mean, someone who comes and is selfless towards you. in terms that they see you that you need some form of assistance, and they readily offer that assistance without looking specifically for any reward. Here it goes. It's gonna cut off this thing. Yeah. So let me try to read the third bit quickly. It says, working out the best solutions. To decide on the best solution to handle anything in life, it is best to look at everything concerned with that problem and do what will help you the survival of the most dynamics. This does not mean that you cannot destroy anything. Death or destruction has to happen sometimes to clear the way for things to move ahead and for improvements to happen. And destruction, when used in that way, is okay and acceptable. For example, you can't build a new apartment building without knocking down the old one that stood there before. Or just imagine what would happen if you had to keep every piece of paper that had ever been given to you in your lifetime, and then you had to move. If you could destroy anything, you would have to drag, if you couldn't destroy anything, you would have to drag all those pieces of paper and everything else you owned around with you. You can see how ridiculous it would get. You have to destroy something once in a while. There's a simple, sensible way to do this. You must not destroy more than you need to in making an area ready for construction. If you start to destroy more than you need to, you get into pretty bad shape very quickly. The dynamics mean simply the various urges of survival. How does someone survive? You could say that a person survives only for himself because he has decided